right. Hello and welcome, everybody, to the inaugural episode of the Empire Exile podcast. I am your host, Dorf, and my co-host every week will be Josh Houselander. How's it going, Josh?
Pretty good, Dorf. What's up, man?
Not too much. So we are doing this. We've actually done podcasts together in the past over on the Empire Media, or the major sports network. That family of podcasts, which have sadly kind of gone on, an indefinite hiatus here. But we got the itch, and we can't stop. So with that in mind, we're launching kind of our own here. Today's topic of discussion is if we were made king for a day. That was all I said to Josh to prepare for this topic, that we get an 8-hour shift as Supreme Overlord. You get to do one thing an hour before you abdicate and retire, and your changes will remain permanent. And so we both approach this in very different directions, and I think this would be very, very interesting. So I more approached it from a perspective of, if I was king of the Supreme Overlord of the United States for a day, and Josh more, if he was starting over and was king of the world, what he would do. So
king of the world, or even just like king of a small island or something, was kind of more the way I approached it. But I like your way too, and I think it'll mix well with the different exchange of the show. And I do have some kind of reference here to the U.S. still as well. So
okay,
do you want to go? You do one, I do one, or we all?
I think it's going to be. We're going to go. We're going to go through your list first.
Okay.
We'll briefly discuss each one, or if I disagree with something or would like to poke a hole in it, I will do so, and we can talk it a little bit. And if not, and then we'll go through mine afterwards. So and do the same thing on the other end, cross-examine it on the other end. So Josh, without further ado, get right into it.
Okay. First decree. I start early in the morning, so we're gonna this is at 7 a.m. as my day of my day of being king of whatever I am king of. But my first decree will be that of a Bill of Rights. Now, historically speaking, I kind of like I don't know, a lot of people don't know this, a lot of people do, but when James Madison was conducting the writing of the Constitution, he actually originally opposed a Bill of Rights because he feared, I should say, that if there was a Bill of Rights, then people would construe that anything not mentioned specifically on that Bill of Rights that they didn't have a right to. And he was very clear that, no, we have a right to everything. We're just making this, these are the really important ones that are obvious. Now, one of the things that I love but have grown to somewhat dislike about the American Bill of Rights in the U.S. Constitution, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, is I love the language of them. I love reading them. It's beautifully written. They are extremely eloquent and have a mastery of the English language when they wrote these things, much like the Bill of Rights, or much like the Constitution, much like the Declaration of Independence. All these documents are beautiful to read. But I think they wrote them with the idea that people were going to continue to get smarter. People were going to continue to become more enlightened as time went on, and unfortunately that doesn't seem to be the case. So they take that eloquent speech, and people seem to misunderstand it. We live in a world where they read, the right to bear arms shall not be infringed, and people debate that endlessly and have been for 200 years. So my Bill of Rights would be much less eloquent. More rights, less eloquence.
More rights, less eloquence, more black and white.
Exactly. You have the right to own a gun, period. You have the right to privacy, period. No matter what, always. I mean, again, we live in a country where the Second Amendment gives us the right to bear arms, the Fourth Amendment gives us the right to privacy, yet people think it's totally constitutional to have to register your firearms with the government.
Or have any sort of permitting system as well.
Right. That's not okay.
So you gonna in your new Bill of Rights here? Are you keeping the clause about quartering of soldiers?
Absolutely. Yeah, except in my version of the Third Amendment, it shall be no soldier or officer of the government, because guess what? Cops quarter themselves in people's houses too, and that should be unconstitutional. I think the founding fathers would have said that that was unconstitutional, then. But again, they said soldier because they were trying to be so beautifully eloquent. So I'll change. How about this? No dude shall, in time of peace or war, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner.
Fair enough. Okay, so is there anything? I know you mentioned specifically the Bill of Rights of the United States. Is there anything extra that you'd want to add right off the top?
I don't think so. That isn't going to be covered in my next 7 decrees.
Okay, fair enough.
I feel like I could go on number 1 forever, but we don't want to do that. I think most of the other stuff is going to be mentioned within the other decrees.
Okay. All right. So you've had a cup of coffee now. Go on to your decree number 2.
Yes. It's now 8 a.m. and we're going to say that, okay, there are only 2 on here. I will say, spoiler alert, there are only 2 on here that could even potentially be construed as something I'm saying you're not allowed to do. That people are that is an infringement upon absolute free animalistic living, absolute dangerous anarchy, if you will. But number 2 is a very basic libertarian principle: don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. This is also known to some. I prefer to just say don't hurt people and don't take their stuff is what you're not allowed to do. But this is what a lot of
the non-aggression principle.
Exactly. The NAP, or the non-aggression principle, is you can do whatever you want as long as it doesn't hurt people. But I will also say that this has to be an outward and a physical version of this. So that means that it cannot be construed, to keep it very relevant to today, it cannot be construed that I am hurting other people by touching my face in public. It cannot.
I was going to ask you about that. I was going to cross-examine you about that, because I know in a past podcast I brought up the point. We did one on vaccines. I believe was that XCast or was that something else? I forget which, but
it would have been POE.
Yeah, it would have been. We did a thing on, and I brought up the point, not necessarily agreeing with it, but could you construe harm or a violation of the NAP to not be vaccinated, because then you could be a disease vector, communicable disease vector, and so you choosing not to do that could be construed as violence on other people. So I would implore you, if you were going to do this, to please be more specific.
And I plan to. Not taking someone else's stuff means it actually has to be legitimately their stuff. That doesn't mean that I went into the forest and as the person X walked into the forest and picked more strawberries than person Y thinks is necessary. Person X went fishing and caught more fish than person Y thinks is necessary. That's not your stuff. That is certainly not your stuff. That stuff doesn't belong to anyone yet. Now, if person Y runs up and grabs the fish out of the person's net as they're loading up their car, you just took their stuff. This is a violation of the NAP. The way I look at vaccines, things like this, you are not committing violence by shadow boxing in on your front lawn. It doesn't become violence till somebody steps in the way of your fist. So you don't like that people aren't vaccinated? The onus falls upon you to not go around those who are vaccinated. Okay. It cannot be construed as violence to not wear a mask at the grocery store. It cannot be construed as violence to touch your face too often. It's your face, after all. You can touch it as much as you want. I do fully acknowledge, and this isn't in one of my decrees, but a society like this would require well-meaning PSAs, public service announcements, things saying, hey, it's not a great idea to drive faster than 70 miles per hour. You know, hey, guess what? There's a virus out right now. Guys, take caution. Wash your hands. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's got to be voluntary. It's got to be voluntary.
Okay. My only thing is I agree with you on the principle. It's just the practical application of that. I think that's a lot more variables to be left to chance than most people would care for. As we're seeing now with all the Corona Karens, I think people have gone soft and really values their supposed safety and security over any sort of freedom. If you don't, I've yelled at people not yelled, but debated with people multiple times since this kicked off. Well, if you don't like it, you're more than welcome to hide at home. Well,
sure.
By you going out, you're going to kill me. Like, well, not if you hide at home. You're more than welcome to.
No, this is the idea that stop being so selfish. But what they're saying when they say stop being so selfish is stop thinking about yourself and start thinking about me. Well, guess what?
That's not how it works. There. Yes.
That you're the one who's actually being selfish with your accusation of selfishness.
Well, I mean, let's a brief tangent here aside on the current reality here. At the beginning of the pandemic, once it made its jump from China to Seattle, I was desperately concerned that this would have a death rate similar to that of Ebola, but it was significantly more transmittable. What makes Ebola not nearly as dangerous to the mass population of the world, especially those who live in dense areas, is that you have to essentially ingest bodily fluid.
Sure.
Or come in contact with wet bodily fluid, usually blood. Ebola causes people to hemorrhage from all over the place. If you're around them at all, transmission is likely possible. However, it's so deadly. It's hard for that. You hear that R0 number, that number of people infected, how many more people they infect. Number is generally speaking low with Ebola because people die quickly and don't have don't carry it for a long time to spread to all their friends. I was worried that this was a highly transmittable, highly deadly disease. I'm like, oh shit, we're fucked. I bought enough stuff to hunker down for 8 weeks. And then the more and more data we bring in on this and the less and less we seem to pay attention to it, the fact is if you're under 50, you're more likely to die of the seasonal flu.
Absolutely.
And you know what? Yeah, it's incredibly deadly to old people. You know what else is incredibly deadly to old people? The seasonal flu.
Sure, what else is
I'm not. It's just a flu, bro, because it's not. It's a horrible way to go. But the idea that you've never been able to kill grandma by giving her a hug at Thanksgiving has never been true. That's always been true. This is the first time people have been forced to think about it. And the idea that, oh my God, if you leave your house, you're committing violence upon me, that is just insane. I see the risks. I accept the risks, just like I do getting behind the wheel of a car every day.
Sure.
I know that it's an inherently dangerous activity. There's 50,000 people in the United States that die every year on the roads, roughly. I think that number is roughly accurate. But we don't stop. We accept that risk every time we get behind the wheel, whether you thought about it or not. I'm willing to accept the risk to go out in public. Some people may not be, and that's their choice. And you know what? The risk is variable for everybody. It's just like it's variable by where neck of the woods you live on, what kind of driving you do, and how skilled of a driver you are. I understand people's concerns that, oh well, I might catch it. Well, if that was the case, we would have had if it was as deadly as Corona Karen thinks it is, they would have the National Guard and chem suits delivering everybody groceries, not just saying, oh, it's okay to go to a grocery store. If it was that, where do you think the number one disease vector for the average person is? the fucking grocery store, yet we still go there.
Right.
God damn. All right, sorry. Rant over.
No, listen, Dorf, I realize I'm being very philosophical and idealistic today, but that is how I interpreted it. I'm king for the day, so I have that right to, to be that guy.
You are the philosopher king.
I absolutely, I'm a huge fan of that idea. I certainly am. That is what I'm trying to do, is be the truly just philosopher king. You can go back to the divine right. If I'm king for the day, well, then there must be a reason, right? that God, I was selected.
God wills it.
Exactly. Listen, I'm going to take what you said real quick, even a little bit further, and I'm going to say that. Do you know what else is extremely deadly to old people? Oh, did I lose you?
No, you're here. I got you.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, good. The other thing that is extremely deadly to old people is time. They don't have as much time here statistically as the rest of us. Granted, any person in their 20s could, get behind a wheel and have a tragic accident, as you mentioned. But old people are running out of time, and nobody's gotten out of this world alive yet. My mom actually said to me the other day, she's in her mid 60s and very healthy, by the way. But she said to me, I was thinking the other day, and she's 10 years older than her dad was when he died. And she said, who knows how much time we have on this life? And the government, or whoever you want to say, they just stole a year. They just stole a year, or half a year anyway.
And they gave you $1,200 for it.
Yep. They stole a year from your life, people. They stole 2020. And that might have been destined to be a lot of people's last year on this earth. But either way, we only get that finite amount of years on this earth, and somebody just stole one from us. I'm not okay with it for any reason whatsoever.
All right,
you also mentioned, you also mentioned the Karens, as you put it, which I love that term. A lot of people like to say that even though the United States of America is supposed to be a free country, that there's no room here for people who are self-described anarchists, or the sovereign citizens, if you will. Well, in King Josh's new country, there's no room for the Karens. Sorry. The Karens, you ain't going to like it here, okay? But I'm giving you your freedom. I'm giving you your liberty. And now I'll sound like just a straight-up Republican. You can like it, or you can get the hell out of here. I don't,
I would say that in Joshtopia here, you're more than welcome to leave, but you get to choose who gets to come in.
Yes, absolutely.
We're not keeping you here, but we won't let you back in if you leave.
Mm-hmm. But as for the Karens, change or you're not gonna like it here. Sorry. But anyway, number 4. Or was that? No, that was only number 2. I'm sorry. Number 3. This I kind of touched on with number 1, and that is everything else is a right to, including your wealth. You have a right to your wealth. Every single penny of it,
so
whether
it
is
your way of strengthening property rights.
This is my way of saying taxation is theft, and I already told you you're not allowed to take other people's stuff. This is also my way of saying, and yes, I do strengthening property rights for sure. Yes, definitely. If the government is taxing your property, then it's actually not your property. So we don't own anything here. We own absolutely nothing in this country. Also, I'm saying that government certainly can't stomp on your rights, but government isn't the only thing that can stomp on people's rights, and your rights trump anything. They trump both those things. So it isn't just the government that must respect all your rights. It's corporations, too. It's other individuals, too. Is that enough on that one?
No critique there. I differ from you, and I begrudgingly say that taxes are the cost of living in a civilized society, and I don't like it, but that's debate for another time. Continue.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I've said that many times. The taxes are the price you pay to live in a civilized society, but I always write it in the SpongeBob retard text when I do it.
The alternating capital lowercase.
Yes, exactly. Anyway,
it's one of those classical conundrums for me that it's awful, but I don't have anything better unless, of course, the only other option to an alternative to a tax system is your government has to be a for-profit corporation, and that's how it funds itself. And
sure.
And I oh boy, the ramifications of that are uglier, in my opinion.
Wait for decree number 7.
All right, go ahead. Let's get there.
All right, decree number 4. Small local governments and protective services may be elected, but their power may never supersede the rights of others. Now, what I mean by this basically is what elections and what people can be elected are things like a county sheriff. You know, if a community chooses to elect, sheriffs or judges, they may do so. But their power absolutely, positively is not more than your average citizen. And the problem with those type of elections in the past is they were a great idea and a great way to do this, but some people want their rights taken away, as ridiculous as that sounds. So they actually will vote for more draconian measures because, because they're Karens or whatever you want to call it. But under this, it doesn't matter how much percentage of the vote you got, you can't take away people's rights, period.
Like it.
Number 5, any unapproved surveillance of another person is a direct violation of that person's rights. And like we discussed in number 3, that isn't just about the government. Okay? You are not allowed to tape people. You are not allowed to videotape people without their permission. That is a right. That is an absolute right to privacy. You have a privacy. You are allowed to pick your nose when you think nobody's watching without somebody actually seeing you. That means that, now granted, if you insist on setting up a camera in your own living room, you go right ahead. You go right ahead. That's fine. But if you own a gas station and your door says open, you're not allowed to tape people. Okay? You're not allowed to do that.
In that regard, Josh, would you be okay with an implied consent form, much like you see on the back of like sports tickets, where by walking through the gate in possession of a gate admission, you hereby agree to the following terms and conditions, and one of them could be, we tape things just in case we get robbed or whatever, or to monitor employee performance?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, absolutely not okay with that. And
even if it was posted like on the doorway in plain, I say plain English. I mean, it could be, pick local language accordingly, but in plain text, this is what happens when you walk through these doors. By doing so, you accept that this is acceptable.
No, not okay.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I think a lot of liberty-minded folk need to make an acknowledgement that I am willing to make. This might raise the level of shoplifting a little bit. But shoplifting is illegal, as we know. It is not okay. I am fully acknowledged to admit that this may raise the level of shoplifting a little bit, especially when it comes to minor things. A risk worth taking. an absolute risk worth taking. A person's likeness is their own.
Okay,
They have a right to it.
I disagree. I would agree with the caveat that you've proposed here in your kingly decree, assuming I would like the, with permission allowable added, but even it doesn't have to be necessarily written permission, but it could be not necessarily just an implied term of entering an establishment, but a explicitly accepted term by posting it in plain sight. For if you walk through the store, you agree to this.
Yeah, I guess the problem with that, my problem with that, is that large corporations inevitably take control of things, and they take over a monopoly, which isn't a monopoly. Isn't I know by the root word of monopoly, it means control by one thing. But
are you, Josh? Are you worried that
Chrysler and GM are all on the same page or something?
Yeah,
they have a monopoly over it.
Fair. Okay, so are you worried the classic grocery store example? If the only grocery store within 50 miles of you has that requirement, but you don't want to play by the rules of that game, your choice is to give up on your own principles or starve. Is that what you're worried about?
Yes, it is. The idea that gas stations can do this if they go by your rules, but Speedway, Sunoco, Amoco, and Mobil have all decided that they are going to, as a rule, put these cameras up. Well, okay, so you got to search out that, how many mom-pop gas stations are around? I know they exist. They do exist, but they are few and far between. And you've in essence destroyed the idea of the
right. Sure. Okay. That would be something I would need to ponder further before I discussed it. Anyway, continue. Next.
I admit, this next one is absolutely something I'm telling people they're not allowed to do. This is something that I am actually, and I hate this term, but I am saying you can't do this because of the greater good. And it's a little bit of a silly one to some people, but I think it's dead serious. People are going to say I watch too many sci-fi movies. Maybe I have. But there shall not be a computer or robot made in the likeness of the human brain. I fear that my free society will open itself up to a powerful robot overlord or something along those lines. I know that may sound a bit ridiculous, but
I'm not even worried about the overload part. I do like this. I wouldn't cover it in my 8 kingly decrees, but I like this, and I'm more worried about the fact that in the not too distant future, humans will no longer be necessary, and
exactly.
Not to the point we're going to have Star Trek replicators here in the next few years, because but at the same time, we've essentially automated physical work. We're at the precipice of commercially available automation of mental work too. And I understand a lot of the physical work is those automations are more efficient, and I get that. But at the same time, when we forget that we're a society of people, and people need purpose, and a large amount of purpose is derived from occupational musings, when we make it essentially no longer profitable to employ people, you think the distribution of wealth is wacky now. Just wait.
Sure. Humanity, I believe, is meant to be a free people. So I oppose the creation of something that could very easily enslave us. Very easily. Or just decide that we are unnecessary and move on from there. I didn't lose you again, did I?
Nope, you're still there.
Okay, right on. So I know that some people think that's a real weird one. Some people think, oh, geez, yeah, okay, watch the Terminator again, Josh. Read another Dune book. No, I do believe it's a serious problem. It's a problem that we've been talking about for 100 years in this country, and in this world, I should say, and we've done nothing but see it come closer and closer to fruition, and haven't stopped yet. So let's cut it out,
Okay.
or at least be smarter about it.
And you know what? I'm getting to the point where, specifically from the advantage of the United States here, I would love to. I would consider banning levels of automation that would be, or banning commercial use of levels of automation that make humans obsolete in economic activity.
Sure. No, I have no problem with
At the same time, if I do that in America, somebody else isn't going to, and then guess who's going to have to start kissing that boot?
Mm-hmm.
Unless, of course, you commit the, if I'm America and I make that one of my kingly decrees, anybody who comes close to doing that or threatening to do that, am I now bound by moral responsibility to essentially go to war to prevent that from happening?
Perhaps.
Oh boy, that's a slippery slope.
Well, this is the thing too. This seems like it's an anti-technology, like I'm some sort of anti-technology zealot. But I actually have no problem whatsoever with a machine that takes the job of 40 people and turns it into a job for one person. I don't have a problem with that at all. I don't care if it takes away jobs. I don't care if it's bad for the economy. That, in the long run, is good.
Well, here, my problem is when the supercomputer takes with an internet connection and a connection to other supercomputers, takes the jobs of thousands of people and turns it into none.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with creating put it this way, I don't have a problem making decisions to create machines that make life easier. I have a problem with the machines making a decision. And that is where I say, that they shall not be made in the likeness.
And even here is the even crazier part of machine learning. People don't understand how machine learning works. Machine learning is essentially you give a computer parameters and tools to get a job done, and it just, through trial and error, constantly modifies its process till it gets to the one it's most efficient. You have no idea how it gets there. There is nothing to audit. There is nothing to realize. The Josh, to reiterate your concerns here, the idea we have these like deep learning and machine learning algorithms that are just observing patterns and then making operational improvements on those patterns, and those who program them have no idea how it works. What their program essentially, once they say go, they have no control over it anymore. And we're making economic and life-altering decisions based on, here's what we told it to do. We have no idea how it's doing or how well it's really truly doing because our test parameters are shit. And a specific example of this is you see any sort of social media, or like specifically a YouTube algorithm. The algorithm, you hear all the time, oh, somebody's tweet or somebody's video was deleted in error. It's our mistake. We've restored it. It was done by the algorithm, which is just, might as well be the term for the boogeyman at this point, where, we don't know why it shouldn't have been deleted, but it did. Well, and that was a positive outcome for machine learning. I understand that, like, in a scenario like YouTube, where there's literally no barrier to entry on being able to make a video, post a video, that having some sort of moderation where they're a private company, they're more welcome to limit or who's allowed to use it. I understand that, and under the current rules of the game, but there's no way in hell that somebody could watch every minute of content uploaded without severely filtering out who's allowed to use it. But the idea that an unaccountable, unauditable algorithm can make essentially livelihood-destroying decisions especially when they, if you become like a YouTube partner and you monetize your content and you make your living on that, can make
Sure.
career and life altering decisions without chance for appeal or your rationale, or without somebody seeing that, and a human being, who understands nuance, being able to go through that is just untenable for me. And that's something that that also did not make my 8 kingly decrease, but that's something that machine learning and sort of algorithms would need to be somehow auditable. That didn't make it, but that would have been one of mine.
Yeah, I mean, and you're almost bringing it to the point of Mariana's Web idea, if you will. This idea that it inevitably will lead to an invisible, non-physical piece of data in cyberspace that will, at some point, extremely easily take over everything. It could lead to that. And some people theorize that this already exists.
Josh, that's not a matter of that. The technology to do that exists already. It's just a matter of bandwidth and computing power at this point. And guess what? Both of those improve exponentially every single year.
Right. Right.
It's not even like a slight exponential, incredibly exponential.
What is it? It doubles every 18 months is what they usually say, correct?
I bet you it's probably doubles every, I would say 9 at this point. The curve is flipped at this point. It's a lot better than that. Now it's just a money problem. It ain't a tech problem.
Yeah, and for those people out there who aren't math people, if you have 50 of something and it doubles and it continues to double, that doesn't mean you keep adding 50. That means, you have 100, then 200, then 400, then 800, then 1600. This goes on.
Think about it as squaring something instead of not multiplying by 2, but squaring.
Absolutely.
Which is the math, what that actually means mathematically. Anyway. Continue.
So it's getting later in the day. I'm done with a couple pots of coffee. It's been a long one. I've had my kingly lunch of a beef stew and roast pork, and I've taken off my purple robe because it's getting a little warmer. I'm about to order one of the servants to pop a bottle of kingly mead for us to celebrate the feast. But 2 more decrees to go. So number 7, this is the big one here. This is the important one. Should the throne ever be abdicated, myself and all who follow in my bloodline shall serve as a stalwart protector of the rights of this land's people, to lead the small, voluntary defensive military force to be funded solely by the nation's profits. This is, you're asking, how will we keep these rights? This is how, I guess. This is how, I hope that my bloodline does not lose its way. But I would have to say that, people in my bloodline would have to continue this, and if they are not willing to swear the oath, not to the family, but to the liberty of the people, then they would have to be banished with the Karens.
Josh, and then I like that. I think that's a very eloquent way of saying, don't be fucking around with this. In your Bill of Rights, or your constitutional framework here, I think we'll call it, is there an amendment process?
No.
Okay. No additions or subtractions?
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
No amendment process.
And yes, I fully acknowledge that this decree is based on an assumption. I somehow became king for a day. I must have some means. I must have done something. I have to have something. So I get a bunch of money. I have something. And if this place lives on nothing more than the interest of what it started with, then that's how it will have to be. and it will have to be as big or as small as is necessary.
Okay.
Based on that. Decree number 8. I abdicate the throne.
All right. And do you name your successor?
It would. I guess this would be in traditional kingly fashion. It will be my firstborn.
All right. All right. Okay.
Or I guess potential to. I got 4 kids, so
Well, I mean,
potential to
you have any
choose from the 4.
Yeah, you have any sibling? Is there another male sibling or something?
No, I have a sister. I mean, she might try to murder me. I don't know. You know what? If she murders me and can do better for the liberty of the people, then I'm okay with it. But I would have to ask all my family members to sign this, this oath of loyalty, or else face banishment.
All right, there you go.
Whether that be to the island 100 miles away or to Venus, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what I control.
Oh, we didn't kill you. We just banished you to the surface of Venus, where it's 800 degrees Celsius. I think it's 800 degrees Fahrenheit or Celsius. I forget which. And like your body will disintegrate instantly. We didn't kill you. We just banished you.
Maybe Mars or the moon.
Freeze to death and die in the vacuum of space, or freeze to death and die in the no oxygen and fire. We didn't kill you. Mars did.
I'm assuming NASA's actually, which is a terrible assumption. I'm assuming NASA's actually telling the truth and that it's possible to live in some of these places. I don't know.
All right, so it's now my turn to. I specifically attacked this from the angle of if I was made Supreme Overlord of the United States for a day, and I had an 8-hour shift to get this done. Things done I wanted done in the country. So number 1. The beginning of my morning, I have some breakfast, and then I go on a trust busting spree. Too many corporations accountable to profit only own too much of the have too much of an ability to influence policy and infringe on people's constitutionally protected rights. I'm not okay with, well, it's just a private company, bro. It can do what it wants. No. I'm sorry, we have some pretty well-endowed principles here that we'd like to stick to. In order to do that, I'm going to break up some big companies, specifically like a Google and Apple. I'm actually okay with if Apple only split in 2 for the hardware division and the services division. I think that would be all I would need to do to break up Apple at this point.
Makes sense.
Yeah, you can have like your iTunes and your software and your stuff like that, and then you can have your computer manufacturing. They can't be exclusive to either. Google, you've got like 26 underlying businesses. Get ready for them to all operate on their own without any common management. Warren Buffett, you own too much of the energy industry. You own way too much coal. You own way too much railroad. You own way too much natural gas interest now that T. Boone Pickens is gone. Get ready to split that up.
Is Warren Buffett getting the guillotine? I mean, just be honest. Is it just...
You know what? I'm not even mad at Warren Buffett specifically or Berkshire Hathaway. They have maximized their influence playing in the rules of the current game. Yeah, I'm not mad. They're playing by the rules as written. And
if they fight back against the new rules, guillotine or?
I mean, I have supreme authority here, I guess. So let's go. I like banishments more.
Okay, all right.
I don't want to be in the business of offing people who don't listen to me. Anyway, so
you are the government, and as we know, the government's only good at one thing: violence. So
it is the monopolization of violence. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, so this might be necessary in both of our worlds here that somebody gets the firing squad or the guillotine or banishment to Venus.
Shot. Okay, let's go this one. Rocketed into the sun.
That works. Hell of a ride.
Be a great way to go. Number 2, the United States will separate all relationships, business relationships from China within 180 days. All this will allow companies to make plans and relocate and make adjustments. They have 180 days to get stuff. I acknowledge that transit times for physical goods are a thing. They have boats and airplanes need to leave port and airports. By that 180-day mark, you'd still be allowed to unload goods that were loaded prior to that 180-day expiration there. I would also use U.S. federal dollars to help small businesses under limits to be determined at the time of my decree here to help them relocate assets back to the country. That will also come with conditions of needing to employ, if you directly or indirectly employed 1,000 people in China, you better employ just that many people here if you're going to use my money to bring it back. There would be a cutoff because I don't want big businesses will be able to absorb it. I understand it's going to be expensive. I understand it's going to be, company altering, but figure it out. I'm not going to allow this to be a big windfall for big business where they can use our money when they could have take care of it for ourselves. We are doing this not only for economic security, but moral reasons. We don't have any reason to be in business with those people. I would also ban all tourism and all flights emanating from China. And would require visas for Chinese citizens to visit the United States. And I'd be really, really, really stingy about how I gave those out. Next.
I think that would even be good for the economy, actually. I mean, I like that you're saying, we're doing this for more reasons.
It will be a short-term clusterfuck. It would probably be straight quarters of GDP retraction, followed by a V-shaped recovery, as an economic term you've heard a lot in the news here lately. Because that demand for those products necessarily hasn't gone anywhere. There will be reduced overall demand just because of the economic inefficiency. I understand that, but we will more than pay for it.
Better in the long run.
In the long run.
Okay, I have a question on that one, Dorf.
Yes, sir.
Is there some sort of addendum, some sort of caveat in there that the regulations on tourism, especially, or just even some of the other regulations, will be lifted should China change their ways in some way?
Sure, but it's going to be a minimum of 25 years.
Okay, so nobody goes to China for 25 years.
They can do whatever they want, letting people into their own country, but no Chinese tourists coming here.
Oh, okay, all right. So nobody.
We can, I'm assuming they would respond in kind here.
Okay,
I would assume China would respond in kind to my, embargo, effective, personal and business embargo. I would also, as part of this, any sort of cyber intrusion on private industry in effect to try and steal intellectual property is an act of war and will be responded to in kind.
Okay. So you're not saying that Americans aren't allowed to...
If China will allow American tourists after this, they're more than welcome to travel there, but no Chinese tourists will be allowed to come here.
Okay. And you're not bringing anything back?
Nope, I am not. You specifically see in the news, if you pay attention here now, the IP theft that's been taking place through the university system, through what is known as Confucius Institutes. That's an act of fucking war. I am furious over that. Now knowing that has been going on for all these years, it's not just trying to hack companies from afar. You're doing it in our own backyard, and that is in my mind, an act of war and should be treated as such. Next, my third thing is I'm going to streamline redundancies in the federal government. I don't need 23 food stamp programs. I don't need 12 intelligence agencies. I don't need 15 different agencies that administer the U.S. Interior. We'll cut down to one. I'm not going to eliminate these jobs to prevent a local recession. But essentially, when people, we're going to merge management structures and move them all under one umbrella. And I will not replace people when they retire. or leave the business. You know, as the federal workforce declines, as things are streamlined, we will adjust in scope and scale what we decide to do from there. We're not going to do any new work. You know, we're not going to increase headcount. We're gonna do these changes and the streamlining by either buyouts. We'll offer buyouts, strategic buyouts, to people in order to cut the workforce as well. And we'll also just cut by not replacing people when they no longer work here.
Dorf, I gotta say, I absolutely love that one. I mean, so much so that even me as a staunch libertarian who has basically sworn to never support the duopoly again, if a Republican or Democrat were to run with a legitimate plan to do that, I would vote for them. I would actually cast a vote for them if that was something that could actually potentially happen. That is enough of even regardless basically of how they felt about anything else. That is enough of a step in the right direction to actually truly help this nation.
Okay. On that kind of same note, better government here. Government agencies will no longer be centralized in the Washington, D.C. area. We will maintain our capital there, but there's no reason that the Department of Agriculture should be located in Virginia or Maryland, Virginia, D.C. area. Why the fuck is it not in the Great Plains? It's the damn breadbasket of the world. Why is the office not in Kansas, Iowa, Montana, Nebraska, etc., Indiana? Well, why is it not close to things it administers? That sort of lack of closeness allows for ignorant policy to be made, and also by breaking this sort of stuff up, and the same thing with, like, if we're in the Department of Interior and we're going to maintain a National Parks Department, why the hell is that in DC? It should be on site at Yellowstone. As an example, and on top of that, you not only, I realize federal spending is a thing and will continue and boost local economies. We're going to spread that wealth out. We're going to spread it to all 50 states. If I have 50 federal agencies, there's going to be one headquartered in each one. There's no reason, especially in the age of telecommuting and the one-day flight across the country, there's no reason for all that to be centralized in one location.
Good point. I don't think I've ever heard that really vocalized, actually. Or that's a great.
I understand that sort of infrastructure project will take time. On top of my reducing workforce initiative from number 3, we will break ground on properties to relocate these departments across the country, effective immediately, and we will offer relocation assistance to anybody who wishes to stay on. But if you do not choose to stay on, your job will not be guaranteed if you are not willing to relocate. Yeah.
Dorf, if I may, offer a suggestion here. I like what you're saying a lot, and I like that you're, putting in caveats to say that this could take time. But I feel like your approach here really has to, hit the old government red tape adages hard.
And here's the thing. I have absolute authority. There is no committee or bureaucracy for this to go through. And part of, I would assume by my kingly decrees, because I'm not abdicating at the end. I do not have my last step to be abdicating. I would assume that if I put this stuff in motion for the purpose of this exercise, it would be completed as written, even if I'm no longer still king of America.
Right.
If I just borrow, if I get absolute authority for a day and borrowed it from the Donald, if it were to happen tomorrow, if I was allowed to do that, then I would assume this would be carried out faithfully after I'm no longer
sure
overlord.
Government takes so much time to do things, and they hide behind that time, and they use that time as a tool under the guise of, well, things take time. But guess what? Last year, they put a Best Western up right at the corner of where I live, and it took them like about an hour. I mean,
and here's the thing, you look at Elon Musk of, I want to be human space travel again. Like you look at, like I want to be on Mars in 5 years or whatever it is. Well, NASA's like, if we get the appropriate funding, we might be able to make it there in the 2030s. Elon's like, fuck that shit. I'm gonna do this on my own, and I'm gonna pay for it by essentially becoming, commercial space shipping by getting anything you want into low Earth orbit. That will finance all this, and I'm gonna put human beings on Mars by the end of the 2020s. Like, God, he's the deadline's changed a couple times, but
sure,
still. But the idea that we need to work with our partners at Boeing and private industry and stuff like that, like, we need like 3 decades to come up with a launch vehicle. It's like, well, by the time you spend all that time, your tech's outdated by the time it ever leaves. And if something that needs to be precisely balanced and weighted is a space vehicle, where any sort of deviation of center of gravity is deadly, you do need to be careful. It's not like a car where, we're going to bolt a different spoiler on it the 12th hour, and it might change the aerodynamic profile a little bit, but at the same time, it's not going to make the thing blow up.
Sure.
At the same time, the idea that it's a slow, and I understand the purpose of the way that laws are written, the constitutional process is to be slow and deliberate and to avoid knee-jerk reactions, but I'm dictator, so I don't care.
Right.
Next.
Yeah, you have executive, legislative, and judicial power here for a day, so make it.
Yep. Next,
take advantage of it.
We're going to adjust the judicial system here. Lifetime judicial appointments are over. I'm okay with 10, 15, 20-year terms, but the RBG scenario where she's literally, mummifying herself on the bench, can't keep her head up, has like 7 times cancer, like for the 7th time. I don't know if that's the exact count, but it's multiple time cancer. I'm sorry. She should not be able to hold the Supreme Court hostage because she doesn't want to give it up. I understand why there's no term limits to an attempt to make an independent judiciary so they're not up for election, but any sort of federal judgeship can have a term limit, 10, 15, 20 years, but when it's over, you don't get to do it again. There is no re-election. This is your one-time shot at this, federal post. I'm willing to say that we can hire out of the federal judiciary to the Supreme Court, but if you don't get elevated or promoted to the Supreme Court, your time in the federal judiciary is over. You get 1 term and that's it. And it'll be 15, 20 years. Sure. I'm okay with that. But the whole lifetime appointment, the thing is ridiculous. I'm not even against like having somebody of RBG's, judicial preferences on the court, but the idea that somebody who's 85 years old and can't keep their head up is one of the arguably 10 most powerful people in the country is ridiculous.
I don't know if I like that one, Dorf. I mean, I know it's your call, but I don't know if I like that one. I almost feel like you're better off saying, no, it has to be a lifetime appointment. Lifetime means lifetime. There's absolutely no stepping down from this position. And we expect you to do your 8-hour day. If you don't, your vote just doesn't count. If you're not there for the votes, we expect you to get this done. If you're not there, then get out of here. Then you're still here. The spot's here, but we're operating with 10 now. That's just kind of the way I've always looked at that. But your way it's interesting. The idea before was that they had this lifetime appointment, so they just could never do anything else. They had to be committed to it.
Well, I thought the way I've always read the lifetime appointment is to an attempt to make it non-political. If you don't ever have to run for re-election, then you are less likely to bend to political whims, and you're more likely to interpret things as written. Mm-hmm. Not to what is popular.
Sure.
I mean, that ship sailed a while ago, but
it has, unfortunately. I mean, unfortunately, they're appointed by people. They're appointed by people who are
animals,
and then they are approved by people who are political animals as well. So, one question with your way, with 20 years being the thing, 20 years, is that separate? If you serve 20 years on the Supreme Court, are you still eligible to be Chief Justice?
No.
Okay.
My other thing here is this would also have a grandfather clause, so we don't all of a sudden have 2,000 federal judges all turn over all at one day. Anybody current appointments is allowed to keep their lifetime appointments. Any replacements would pick up the 20-year term limit. And so if you're a federal court judge, say the appeals court, district court, you're allowed to be promoted to the Supreme Court and then start a new term limit over. But if you're if you're term limited out of the Supreme Court, you can't go back to being a district judge. Your time in federal service is over.
That makes sense.
And no, the chief judge. Although I didn't think about the regular justice to chief justice thing. I would say that would maybe we could do like a 5-year bonus period or something like that for the promotion. But starting over a 20-year period, that's not going to happen.
Wouldn't you want a potential person if you had the one person on the? I was more talking about Supreme Court, not the circuit courts and other things. I actually am on board with you completely when it comes to lower judgeships. But if you have one person on the Supreme Court who is excellent at what they do, wouldn't you want to be able to take from that pool to have the next Chief Justice?
Pick them right the first time. Then we'll worry about this.
It's just I was just kind of saying that then you have a Chief Justice who you know what you're going into because you're giving them an extraordinary amount of power as Chief Justice. And then if you pick the Chief Justice wrong and he or she happens to be the dumbest guy on the bench, that could be a potential problem. But hey, it's not necessarily altering completely, so makes sense.
Okay, I'm going to move on from there.
Sure.
Number 6, I am going to repeal the 17th Amendment. That is where allowing for the direct election of senators. The Senate will return to being the state's representation in the federal government. States are free to appoint those folks however they choose, whenever they choose. A senator can be recalled by their governor or state legislature if that's or how they choose to do it. However, direct election will not be an acceptable option. The state executive or legislative branch will choose how they send those two people to their states or to the Senate, and that will be the case forevermore. People voting for their senators has always been dumb and continues to be dumb to this day. This will also help reinforce Amendment 10, as now the states will have direct ability to influence policy rather than just lobbying. This will also ensure your smaller states with less economic activity will have to bow less to California, New York, Illinois, etc.
Absolutely love that one, Dorf. I basically am a supporter of every single one of the amendments except the two that they did in the 19 teens. I don't know what the hell those people were thinking. Yeah, I believe they were 1913 and 1919 were the 17th and 18th Amendments. I think I remember that correctly. And I mean, they're a disaster. The 18th, at least, we're smart enough to say, yeah.
Whoops, our bad. Undo.
The 17th Amendment, in essence, it just makes the Senate a more powerful house, and it actually does away with the main objective of the Senate. So I'm with you 100% on that one, Dorf. Great call.
Yep, we're going to restore the so if I would, I would not make this a decree, but this would be the suggestion that the Senate, the 2 senators from each state, will be appointed and recalled at will by governors. That means governor will become a more attractive position to attract some better talent. And they serve at essentially the will of the governor as the governor's 2 lobbyists within the federal government. Okay, next.
I like it.
House of Representatives will have term limits of 8 years going forward. Current members will be grandfathered, so we don't have a entire turnover in 8 years of everybody. Those current members are allowed to serve as long as they continue to be elected, but anybody new would have a maximum of 4 consecutive terms, or 4 terms period. If you win, lose, and then win again, your 8-year clock doesn't start over. It's 8 years total.
Okay.
If you're appointed midterm or win a partial term, that counts as a 2-year block. So, the Senate
Are you
is
still
going to
eligible for Senate with these two new decrees kind of cross over with each other? Are you still eligible for the Senate after your years are up?
Yes, because the Senate will stay also unlimited because they're representatives of the state government. You can essentially be tabbed at any time by your state governor to take a position in the Senate. You would have to, and then in turn give up your House seat. But the Senate will it's independent of that. So you can do 8 years as a senator, or 8 years as a congressman, and then get tabbed by your governor to go serve as the state's representative in the Senate.
Okay, I love that plan, Dorf, but I do feel like you're setting yourself up to some degree to having these people establish their Washington insider status for 8 years and then move on to being a lifelong senator.
Well, you got to remember, the Senate is not a lifetime term in my new system here. I can have a governor who's not as mad at me because I didn't vote the way he wanted me to, and he can recall me tomorrow, and appoint somebody new.
Okay.
That's that level of turnover. There is no defined terms in the Senate. You are now essentially one of the 2 appointed lobbyists for your state within the federal government.
But do they just bounce back and forth with Republican governor puts in these 2 Republicans and Democratic governor puts in these 2 Democrats who are, used to be the House reps?
Yes. I'm okay with that.
Okay. Yeah, just looking for clarity, not disagreement. Yes.
That would also one of the second order effects of that puts more pressure on local elections where it's not so much a winner take all at the national level. The Senate is only won by winning a plurality of states. So the power of the states will, hell, a Republican governor could report a Libertarian and an Independent to his Senate seats if he felt like it. But
he won't.
But that won't happen, but it could. All right, so that is decree number 7. Also part of this, any formal federal government official, whether congressman, House, or janitor in the State Department, is banned from working in media or as a lobbyist anytime post office.
That could make things better.
Yep. I don't need to be seeing former spooks on CNN. That sort of, not only is the risk for state secrets being leaked out too great, that will also essentially help, take on the deep state. Ooh, is it a boogeyman word?
Journalists be journalists, but politicians be politicians, right?
Bingo. The too friendly relationship between those industries and government, whether it's lobbying. The latest stimulus package that's gone through the House, there's a lobbyist specifically bailout because they wrote the bill, gave themselves a bailout because who's going to write your bills if we're out of business? Now,
right.
It's never going to be. There's zero chance of that ever becoming law and that money being paid out. But still, seriously, you're not even ashamed or attempting to hide that. God damn, that's screwy. Anywho, number 8. This is going to be a tax system overhaul / national service program.
Okay.
I will institute a national service program. As long as by the age of 24 you get started in a 2-year national service, whether that be military, a Peace Corps, you can go work on an infrastructure project, or other roles to be determined. For work for national interest, you will not be paid for those periods. Your expenses will be taken care of. You'll be housed, fed, and clothed. Much similar to a military style arrangement there, a barracks living. By the age of 24, your first $100,000 per year of income is tax-free federally for life. You do not have to participate here. If you choose not to participate in the National Service Program, you will have a 25% flat tax on any income you earned under $100,000 per year. There would also be a 40 to 50% progressive tax on incomes over $100,000. If you choose to participate, the first $100,000 is tax-free federally. States are still allowed to levy income taxes if they choose. I would also, as part of my tax scheme here, capital gains would be tax-free. But what I'm going to redefine capital gains to exclude professional stock and investment trades. If that is your majority source of income, so you're a day trader or a hedge fund manager or et cetera, that would be taxed as normal income. Profits on those would be taxed as normal income. They would not be taxed at the lower capital gain rate. So, but if I retire and sell my business to my kid or pass it along, but at the same time that business is an asset, it has value, that transaction would be taxed. Under the current system, it would no longer be defined that way. So that transaction, that handoff, would be tax-free. And if I sell my primary residence and make a profit on it, I'm not expecting anybody to pay taxes on that under my new system. That profit is yours to keep.
Very Robert Heinlein of you, with just a sprinkle of Gene Roddenberry.
At the same time, if you don't, if you choose not to participate, not to pitch in your labor for national service for those 2 years, you're more than welcome to. It's just, people have essentially paid their first 25% of their 25% tax on their first $100K a year in that service period. They got it out of the way. During the service period, that doesn't ban you from making other income during that service period. However, it'll essentially be your full-time job. It's not going to be like a weekend or side gig. It will be your full-time job, but if you do other things that generate income, you're more than welcome to keep it. But it will be taxed at the 25% because you have not completed your service. And you don't have to participate, but also that 100K per year is indexed to inflation and will adjust accordingly here on out forever. So the value of that 100K, what it's worth, the value of that national service stays consistent throughout the ages.
That's exactly what I was about to ask. That's at what point. So you have thought about that. That's good to know. Yeah, because from 75 years from now, 100,000 might be be $10. Right?
Well, you look at the value of Social Security when it first kicked off. We haven't adjusted the Social Security dollars since like the 70s, if I remember correctly. $12,000 a year in 1970. That was that wasn't poverty. That was a middle class living afforded to retirees and disabled folks. Assuming I understand why we haven't done that because of runaway costs, et cetera, but at the same time, this isn't an expense. This is a tax rate, or a tax credit effectively. So it's not money it's money that we just don't get. It's not money that we have to spend. So, and we would have to, of course, adjust incomes, accordingly, or national spending accordingly to afford this. But at the same time, if you look at effective tax rates of folks who make less than $100,000 a year, it's not that much. And especially if you get 2 years of their labor in exchange for that, it'll come out pretty revenue neutral. And just without running any numbers, it'll come out pretty revenue neutral here. Just spitballing it.
Very interesting. Dorf, I'm not saying that I love there's your approach is it's statism heavy for me. I'm not gonna lie.
Well,
but at the same time,
unapologetically
I know you are.
Who's pro nation state.
I understand that you are, but with honestly, if somebody, I would vote for you. I would actually vote for you. If being stuck in this system, since now in this scenario, I'm not king for the day, and I don't get to fix everything. Being stuck in the system, I would vote for you. I would.
I don't. I haven't taken my power by the vote. I've taken it by divine right here, and my term is 1 day. So.
Sure. But if you did, I would
write a good philosophical news piece the day after, or go on a podcast the day after, and say, "I really like this guy. Maybe we should let him have one of these days a year."
Yeah, or say, if we're gonna insist on keeping this system afterwards, then Dorf for president, anybody?
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, I like this, Dorf.
I mean, do you have any honorable mentions or any runners-up you want to mention here? We won't debate them, but anything if you decided to work some overtime on your kingly day, anything else you'd want to do?
No, not really. I can't think of anything, off the top of my head. Sure, some things I didn't go into tweaking every, one of the decrees, but maybe just setting up my basically my in the background shadow system of keeping the liberty, So I realize that somebody will inevitably try to take it away. And so I do fully acknowledge that there would have to be some sort of, little protective force. Okay. Jedi Order, if you will.
So my honorable mentions here would be if I was king of the United States for a day, I would kick off an audit of the Fed. And another one that I'd want to do is make it essentially encoded in law. If you see here the phrase all the time that if the product is free, you are the product. Essentially, free products exist because companies who provide them data mine the shit out of you. In very rare cases, other times that you see like free and open source software is just kindness of people's hearts. They're making a tool for themselves that they choose to share with other people. That's fine. But if it's free and you are the product, that will need to come with some monetary compensation. If they're going to data mine the shit out of you and turn around and sell that data, you get a percentage of that, whatever the sales price is for the percentage of what your data is. So they, obviously I would say it would be a 50-50 trust where collating company keeps 50% and the other, whoever they've data mined must be compensated in form of cash. Not like add-ons or freebies or anything like that, in form of cold hard currency for their proportion of, if you are the data sold is, for example, 1,000 data points and you make up 3 of them, you get, 1/3% of that 50%.
You know what? I do have one thing I will throw in that goes more along the lines of your interpretation of this question.
Sure.
That is, if we are going to have political parties that are, in essence, part of the government, they are supported by the government, I would say that...
There's a box on your taxes that you can fund their campaigning.
Right, exactly. They are fully a part of our government, whether people want to admit it or not. So I would say that if people insist on having that, if government insists on having that the debates, which are a huge part of our election process now, because of a free media and because of the way we have adapted socially to the elective process, I would say that in at least one of the debates, if a candidate is on the ballot in all 50 states, they must be included.
Okay.
And the debating is mandatory.
Okay.
That
I don't hate that.
You don't get to say, well, I don't feel like I'm not showing up to that debate. Not showing up to the debate, you're off the ballot. Period.
Interesting. Very, very interesting, sir. Well, anything else you want to add to this before we wrap this up?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered it a lot. The only thing I would add is that for those of you listening out there, give us a contact. Contact us any way if you can, and let us know who'd you like better. King Dorf or King Josh, and let us know.
So you can do that.
Either, both.
Let's say do that on Twitter. We do have a Twitter account. Here it is. If
Sure.
you're watching this in video form anywhere, it's in the background. It's at Empire_in_Exile_. And you can, we're gonna be posting this a variety of places. The first two places this episode will go will be both our YouTube channel and our Podbean distribution service. With now that I have content, I've got a list of like 15 other places it's gonna be. That I haven't created those accounts yet because they require content first. So all that will be available, and hopefully a website to come here too. Didn't want to start that until we had some content either. So with that being said, I think that is going to wrap this episode up. Trying to put some outro music here that's not loading. Anyway, thanks for joining us here on this first episode. We aim to publish here every Tuesday is the plan so far. So same time, same place, wherever you found us this time. We'll talk to you all later. Have a good one.
Thanks.